People's Temple drank punch laced with cyanide, committing mass suicide on orders from self-proclaimed Messiah, Reverend Jim Jones. The bodies are grim testimony to how destructive a cult can become. Ever since these tragic events, experts have been intensifying efforts to identify cults and warn the public of their potential dangers. It is estimated there are now more than 2,000 cults in this country. Most are not as visible as Jonestown. They hide behind what appear to be religions or legitimate businesses claiming to provide a needed service. For example, Quan, a chain of martial arts schools in the suburbs offering classes in self-defense. The Williams Healing Temple, promising spiritual comfort to the inner-city poor. The Church of Scientology, attracting members through business management courses that promise increased profits for medical professionals. In this program, you'll hear from victims of these cults, not just impressionable adolescents, but well-educated professionals lured into groups that took their money and manipulated their minds. Some will talk of fear and fraud and threats of violence. Others will talk of blackmail and brainwashing. In one cult, people have died following the advice of their leader. Many of those who talked with us asked for anonymity because they're afraid. They're speaking out so others don't fall into the same trap. They say that behind all the mystical symbols and philosophy, the pseudoscience and psychology, the religion and the rhetoric, lie dangerous organizations that are cults and cons. The schools of Quan are scattered throughout the Chicago suburbs and in Massachusetts, Minnesota, California, and Texas. They attract students of all ages, teaching what they claim is 8 martial arts in one. Instructors say that by developing a strong mind and body, students learn not only self-defense, but also to understand themselves and find true happiness. Joe Zimhart has deprogrammed several former Quan students. He says the schools are not what they seem to be.
It fits every single definition of a cult which I have studied.
All cults have certain common characteristics. They have charismatic leaders claiming to possess mystical powers, secret knowledge, and promising salvation. Quan schools were founded by John C. Kim, a former maintenance man. School signs proclaim him martial arts champion of all Asia, but martial arts officials say there's never been such a title. School posters show Kim demonstrating Quan techniques, crouching like a tiger, soaring like an eagle, using his whole body as a weapon to attack. Former followers were told he had supernatural powers. Many believed it.
It was said that he had a lot of healing powers, that he could essentially heal anything.
They told us that when he was in the room, you could see aura, a halo around him.
I thought I was going to learn the secrets to life, to deeper meaning of life.
He had a third eye in his forehead.
That explained what?
That he could read your mind. His powers were phenomenal. They made him seem like a god to us.
Cults recruit followers by targeting vulnerable people, those who are lonely, lack direction, or self-esteem. Former instructors say Quan schools kept dossiers on students, which detailed just that kind of personal information.
We looked for people's weaknesses. We would spend time in groups going over each individual student and determining how to best hit their mind, as it was put.
You can convince them, hey, your life is terrible. Look at your job. Look at how people treat you. Look at how your wife and family are. You need to improve all of that, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Then that's when they're going to hire courses and you become a better instructor.
Cults also manipulate their followers by using mind control techniques. In Quan, experts say the mind control begins with the martial arts training. physically wearing down students by ordering them to constantly repeat movements or hold poses for long periods of time.
What happens is that they go into an altered state of consciousness. In that type of altered state, they're very susceptible to suggestions. It's the same kind of thing that takes place in a hypnotic trance.
Students say they were worked to the point of exhaustion.
They would control how much you would sleep even and keep you there late at night practicing so you'd be more tired and more vulnerable.
One woman says her son became obsessed.
It was like a brainwashing. His whole life was waiting for someone else to dictate to him what to do, when to eat, when to move, when to breathe.
They slowly brainwash you to the point you believe anything they tell you.
And when students say they felt like they were brainwashed?
There is, quote, brainwashing going on in this organization.
Mind control?
Definitely mind control.
Cults alienate their members from families and friends who might question their conduct. Quan instructors have urged students to abandon their future plans, saying lessons were a better education than college and that marriage would get in the way of training. Instead, students were pressured to move in with other believers.
Why was that done?
They have more control over you, so if you had no other outside influence other than through Quan.
This woman's son was living with Quan students when he was seriously injured on the job and couldn't walk. Doctors released him to his mother's care, but after he talked to his Quan instructor, other students came to her house and took her son away.
And my son said, I made a mistake. I should not have returned to the home of my parents. And so, my husband and I argued with him, with our son, and with the people taking him out. But there was like a wall we were arguing with. They weren't hearing us.
In time, the injury healed, but her son stayed with Quan.
My son, his entire life, all that he is, all that he will be, appears to be owned by Quan.
You feel like you've lost your son to Quan?
Oh, very much so, yes. Almost like he died.
Cults are not illegal. There are no laws that prohibit them. But cults often exploit their members financially, and that's where the law can step in to protect the public from being conned. For example, in Illinois, it's illegal for any martial arts schools to sign students to contracts for lessons exceeding $2,500 per year. Students must be given copies of their contracts, and schools cannot use deceptive or coercive sales tactics. At first, Quan classes are relatively inexpensive, but once enrolled, former students were pressured to sign a series of increasingly expensive contracts. There was a black belt course for $10,000 to $15,000, the Olympic course for $20,000, the instructor course for $20,000 to $30,000. Before contracts were signed, students say instructors put them through strenuous workouts and humiliated, even hurt them during class.
By the time I would get a student into the office, hopefully he's very intimidated and willing to accept my direction and my word.
And your direction would be?
My direction would be to get him in a black belt course.
Sign on the dotted line.
Yes.
Quan students say they did not get copies of their contracts and were told it's disrespectful to ask for them.
I said, may I please have a copy of that? Well, what's the matter? Don't you trust us? And far be it for me to tell somebody who can terminate my life in 2 seconds, you know I don't trust you.
Students were told that to show their respect, they must pay for their lessons in cash. Some former students speculate there might be another reason.
Well, I'm no dummy. I know why they wanted cash.
Why?
So I don't have to report it. Good, it goes right into your pocket, for Christ's sake.
To get cash, students were urged to sell their cars and use up their savings. Students with few possessions were badgered with questions.
Did you have any stocks or bonds that you could sell? Do you have a grandparent or a relative with money that would be willing to finance your black belt program?
They wanted your money.
That's all they wanted was your money.
Some students were so intimidated they even turned their paychecks over to the school and got an allowance from instructors for living expenses. But sometimes it just wasn't enough to live on. One woman caught her son going through her jewelry box and even stealing food.
And I said, if you're that hungry, I'll feed you, but I really don't want you stealing from me.
Former instructors say they were exploited as much as the students, paying for their own lessons while working for little or no salary and only promises of financial security. In just 2 years, Jeff Austin signed 3 contracts for lessons, the largest for $36,000. At one point, school officials almost convinced him to sell his real estate business and sign a 4th contract, a certificate course that cost as much as $100,000.
$100,000 to get what?
I'm not sure. At that point, who cared?
He can laugh now because he's had extensive counseling from Joe Zimhart.
The mind control in this organization has them believing that the quicker they pay it off, the more righteous or more direction they have within the organization, the more loyalty they have to Chung Mu Quan ideas. And so it behooves them to pay it off quickly, and therefore they generally drain their bank accounts quite rapidly.
Jeff Austin says by the time he finally quit Chung Mu Quan, John C. Kim personally awarded him a black belt, even though Austin had not taken the test for it. It was one of the many events that finally made him realize students were being conned into believing the schools were legitimate.
But the things they're doing are completely contradictory to that.
What are they doing?
They're conning people.
The final con, this card given to students showing their rank was registered with the Chung Mu Quan organization, Asian headquarters. John C. Kim's own lawyer admitted to me that there's no such organization.
It doesn't exist.
Not that I'm aware of.
Gallo insists the schools are beneficial to an individual's health and well-being.
Is it a cult?
No.
Are students being conned in these contracts?
I am unaware of any con in these contracts at this time.
One of the more frightening characteristics of a cult is the physical intimidation used to command loyalty and obedience from members. In Chung Mu Quan, threats of violence sometimes seem to come straight out of a Bruce Lee movie.
A Chicago area karate instructor says he was reminded of this scene when he opened a competing martial arts school in suburban Woodridge in 1982. The instructor says he was invited to a nearby Chung Mu Quan school where he was greeted by 20 students and their instructor.
This person had such power over these people that these people were like robots. They were, whatever this man said, they would do.
Just as it happened in the Bruce Lee movie, Cochran and a friend were surrounded by the students. He says the instructor ordered them to attack.
Quick, go destroy them! Kill!
In the movie, Bruce Lee wins after fending off dozens of attackers. In real life, the 20-to-1 odds were too much for Cochran. He was beaten by the Chung Mu Quan students, then threatened by the instructor.
And he said, in front of all these people, I promise you that if you open up your school, we will kill you.
He threatened to kill you.
Yes, he did.
Were you scared?
Yeah, I was terrified.
Cochran was not alone. Police in several suburbs received reports that Chung Mu Quan followers were harassing and beating up owners of other schools. This former Chung Mu Quan instructor told us they were trying to put their competitors out of business.
We're told to hurt them, and we beat them up. Put them on the street, put them in the hospital a couple different times.
Why?
Because Chung Mu Quan is a superior art, and they were garbage because they knew another style of martial art.
Former students and instructors say violence was used to keep them in line as well.
They would beat you up physically, you know, if you didn't do whatever they wanted you to do, whether it's sign a contract or open a door or hand things with two hands or forget to bow, they would physically hurt you.
This student was so frightened of his instructor, he was afraid to quit in person.
I mean, let's not kid ourselves. They had swords and knives and spears, and all of those things are very intimidating.
This instructor says that when he quit, a supervisor threatened to have him killed.
To this day, you're still scared of them.
Yes,
Why?
I don't want to be killed. There's a lot of people listening to every word that the higher belts say, and they'd do anything, even kill somebody if they were told to kill somebody.
Do you really think that?
Sure.
You're not exaggerating.
No.
You think that if they were ordered to kill, they would kill?
Sure.
No, it doesn't surprise me that people would act out every single command that the management in Chung Quan hands out, especially to the instructors, because that is how they're conditioned. They're conditioned to behave on command.
Several students say they were told Chung Quan was responsible for the death of Bruce Lee. Lee actually died in 1973 of excess fluid on the brain that may have been caused by drugs. The Chung Quan version is that Lee was a follower who divulged secrets. This former instructor says he heard what happened to Lee from John C. Kim, the founder of the Chung Quan schools.
And the way that it was said that he was dealt with is that a higher belt from Asia came over, was a 7th degree, came over and injured without touch, and that he died later from that.
He does not believe the story.
But what it does tell me is some very scary things about their thoughts concerning people that are what they consider against the organization and how they would deal with that.
Greg decided to get out after a Chung Quan official asked him a frightening question.
You willing to give up your life or to risk your life for the knowledge that you can learn? You know, and I was like, whoa, that's weird.
He says Chung Quan has an ominous term for those who quit.
And that's what they said to me when I left, is you are walking dead.
Chung Quan officials deny using intimidation, but then they threatened me, saying an accident would happen if I reported this story. As a result of our investigation, the Illinois Attorney General's office charged the schools with violating consumer fraud laws, and the Internal Revenue Service is investigating whether all those cash payments were ever reported to the government. Next, death at a religious cult that some call the Killing Temple.
We got another Jim Jones. Only it's not Jim Jones, it's Hazel Williams.